Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today, I am joined by the writer of Future State Gotham, Arkham Academy, Justice League Incarnate, and the upcoming Unstoppable Doom Patrol first seen in Lazarus Planet Dark Fate. Dennis Culver, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you. Doom Patrol is a very special show to me and a lot of people who listen. Or the show and the books. We haven't covered it in years, and you're the first person I get to talk to who's written the comic because there hasn't been one since we started. So I'm very excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I love the TV show too. It's way better than I had ever expected to be. It's so good.
Yeah, it was very unexpected, especially because it allows the roots of the comics to like really show through in ways you're like, oh, they let them do that. Nice.
Yeah, they nailed it. It's great.
So I'm not sure how much you know about me as a interviewer, but I'm known as a hard-hitting journalist. So I hope you're ready for my first question.
Oh man, here we go.
What's your favorite sandwich?
My favorite sandwich. Whew. That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like a burger is a classic. Are we counting that okay? I know people get weird about counting burgers, hot dogs.
I am of the belief that anything that fits between two slices of bread or one slice of bread slit down the middle is a sandwich. So,
all right, I tell you what, I love a good meatball sandwich too. Like a meatball sub, like you do it right. Those are some of the best I've ever had. Yeah, I would probably say if I had to land on one, because there's still a meatball sub I used to have years ago in Florida that I still think about. It's just it no longer exists. So that's probably it.
It's a good answer. Now you're doing the Unstoppable Doom Patrol, and the Doom Patrol themselves haven't really had a presence since the Young Animal era. Rest in peace. And we right now are entering a new era of DC. Where do you want to position the Doom Patrol in this new world?
Well, I think baked into the pitch of our Doom Patrol run, which was kind of in process even before or as Dawn of DC was coming together. But it was very important to me that I wanted to have the Doom Patrol firmly rooted in the DC universe and feel like a part of the whole universe and for good or bad, and contrasting with what's going on there. And a lot of the pitch that I wrote and the concepts that Burnham and I came up with together were ideas of how like this new status quo for the Doom Patrol, which is saving the world by saving the monsters, how that runs afoul of, the powers that be in the DC universe, the other superheroes and things like that. That's where I found a lot of interest with taking these characters and bringing them in there. They've been a part of the DC universe. This is their 60th anniversary this year. But because of the way they've always kind of been off to the side or off in the corner, they haven't interacted with the DC universe in a lot of significant ways. So it's kind of exciting doing this because there's a lot of new territory that we get to journey into with this team interacting with the DC universe.
And it is interesting because it technically is a team book, despite not really thinking of it like something like Justice League or Teen Titans. What do you think sets them apart thematically from those types of stories that you typically get with a team like the Justice League?
Well, I think the way the DC universe is built, especially if you're contrasting it with the Marvel universe, like the Marvel universe, you have a lot of, you have the Avengers family of books and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and there's all these like different things. And really, in my mind, the main part of the DC universe is this one giant family, which is the Justice League, right? Because if you consider the Titans are really, it's mostly sidekicks that are grown up and like kind of coming into their own. So they're very related to those core superheroes, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Even the Justice Society are really the mentors of the Justice League. It's all kind of just revolves around this one big pillar. And then you've got over off here to the side is the Doom Patrol, and they are not really connected to those guys in any significant way. Like the closest connection is Gar, which is Beast Boy, and he kind of left the Doom Patrol to join the Titans, and has spent more time there than he ever spent with the Doom Patrol. So they're almost by design and by nature, the outcasts that they've always claimed to be. And they're overdoing the weird stuff and encountering the weird things that often the Justice League and those family of books never really encounter. So it's kind of baked into the concept, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see, like, now what happens if the Doom Patrol starts to get a little more proactive and really starts getting more involved into the main area where all these other heroes are operating. And when they have a different methodology, they start stepping on toes. And so that makes some exciting conflict.
And a lot of the Doom Patrol team, if they come or go, a lot of them are characters who seem to have a lot of trauma and are, some would say, like broken characters who are still trying to learn about themselves. How do you balance out these deep emotional stories and their weight with the bizarreness of so many of these kind of characters in their worlds?
Well, it's an interesting trajectory if you kind of look at all of the Doom Patrol comics as a whole, like as one large tapestry. And I'm a big fan of all your comics count. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, this all happened. And I think you can kind of, if we were charting a graph of their journey, their emotional journeys and their healing journeys, more importantly, of processing and dealing with their trauma, I think when you get to the end of the last run with the Way and Darrington run, you could argue that a lot of them have really done a lot of the work. They've done a lot of healing and they're processing their trauma. And I think if you extrapolate from there, what's next? Well, if they're starting to heal and they're starting to get their shit together, then you can kind of come to the idea. What's like, well, what do you do when you get your shit together? You want to help other people get their shit together, right? And so I think there's a logical progression to our series where we take these characters who have almost become professionals at dealing with trauma, and now they're taking it and they're helping others deal with their trauma, because as a result of Lazarus Planet, which is that the Lazarus volcano erupted and poured resin all over the planet, which sent the whole planet into havoc. That activated the metagene of a lot of people. It caught more people than ever now are metahumans after this. As a result of all that havoc. And when you're a metahuman in the DC universe, it's not a guarantee that you become a very beautiful superhero or a very beautiful supervillain for that matter, right? Like sometimes you just become a freak, you become a monster, you become, something that has to be dealt with. And a lot of times when superheroes in the DC universe deal with that, after they contain the problem is sent to a few places. It can be sent to Star Labs, it's a laboratory. It's not great. It's probably the best option though. Or you get sent to, a place like Arkham Asylum or one of the other prisons. And when you go to Arkham, or Arkham Tower now, I guess, you either become a really bad Batman villain or you become a victim of a really bad Batman villain, right? There was a great Dan Slott Arkham Asylum miniseries back in the day where he kind of explored that with like a character who, kind of went through the Arkham system and he did not come out the other end great. But then the worst possible scenario for a metahuman is you get recruited into like the Suicide Squad, where you get like a bomb put in your head and you become a weapon. And honestly, all those options coming from the perspective of the Doom Patrol, they're not happy about it. It pisses them off, right? And so they want to be able to take metahumans and just help them deal with what can be disabilities at first and maybe turn those into abilities. An example I like to use is if suddenly your metagene's activated and you've got tentacles for arms. You got to figure out all kinds of things like how to tie your shoes and how to brush your teeth and things like that. And we never really explore that in superhero comics. And I think when the Doom Patrol comes in, they take them to their base, which is a place we're calling the Shelter. And it's a place where they help rehabilitate people, and not just to become the newest member of the Doom Patrol, that might happen, but also just to like integrate and be able to exist and function in a society with these abilities, which I think is really interesting. But when you put a bunch of what other people consider weapons of mass destruction all in one building, that starts to become a problem too.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that we're touching on and exploring with Doom Patrol.
Damn, you beat me to my next question because I was so interested in that most of the Doom Patrol can't pass for like just regular people after their powers have ignited. So you're going to be exploring those types of themes in your run.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, I think that is, that is the distinction with a lot of narratives where it's like, oh, we're a freak because we have super powers. And it's like, Burnham put it great the other day. He was like, it doesn't make sense when somebody has like toxic waste spilled on them and they come out the other end looking like a supermodel. That's not usually the case. And I think, baked right into Doom Patrol, you've got like, this brain in a jar robot. You've got a mummy. You've got a giant woman who turns to sludge. Like these are people that can't just go and hide in society. And so it's about learning to integrate, finding your own people that will accept you and doing all that stuff. So yeah, it's a really interesting concept to explore. It has a lot more depth than you think it does as you dig into it too.
Yeah, and after reading your Dark Fate story from Lazarus Planet, I really loved your voice of these characters because there's a situation in the story where it could have been resolved in most other big 2 superhero books with a punch, a fight, things like that. But the Doom Patrol resolves it with communication and compassion. Do you think those 2 things are going to be a big part of your stories that you're telling now? And why do you think these characters are the ones who can navigate those stories?
I mean, I think it just comes from like a lived experience. Like when, it's, I mean, at the end of the day, Superman's an alien from another planet. And while he is phenomenal at relating to people and probably the best, there's a lot of other ones that are maybe a little hard to relate to, if you're just the average metahuman like Batman. And while the Doom Patrol can be off-putting in their appearance, they also, if they're talking to someone else who's off-putting in their appearance, they're really able to explain like, hey, I went through this too. All those feelings you're having, all that anger, sadness, whatever, I felt it too. Here's what worked for me. Maybe it can work for you. And I think that's a really interesting take that I haven't really seen, done too often in superhero comics. And I'm excited to explore that too.
Yeah. It's the stuff that I think is way more interesting to me than just punching someone all the time. So I got to read issue 1.
To be clear though, there will be punching. We'll definitely be punching things sometimes, but it's that definitely happens, especially when you got Robot Man who can just that's part of his charm is he can't really die because he's just a brain and robot body. He's made to be beat up and punched on and punch things.
I am interested about Robot Man because he's always had this kind of unique humor about him that he has like threatening one-liners and like verbal jabs. He's just kind of like not a meathead, but he like makes these comments. How do you write him as a character? Like, are you approaching him with more comedy in mind? Like, how do you balance him?
He's in my mind, he's a curmudgeon with a big heart, like, I mean, there's all kinds, like if you ever watched NYPD Blue and you remember Sipowicz, like that was just this gruff guy, but he had this deep heart and it was a balance of that. There's like plenty of that trope repeated in TV and movies. I think other points of comparison when I think about Robot Man, I think Ben Grimm, Hellboy, there's a certain blue collar quality to those characters, and it's it's Robot Man when he's on the scene. It's like, all right, that's the monster. I'm the guy. I'll go in first. He rolls up his sleeves. He knows he's going to get beat up and banged around, but he largely doesn't feel it, so he walks into it. But he's also the one who is perhaps the most compassionate character because he's been through so much. And, he's, because of his gruffness, he sometimes steps on toes and trips over things, but he's on his own journey of figuring out what works. But I think the one through line of his character is he even, no matter how much he complains, he wants to help.
Right. I love the character, so I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on him.
He's a very, very accessible character, even though he's the most inaccessible in terms of his physicality, but it's like, I almost feel like that big empty robot body is there for the rest of us to inhabit with him,
Yeah. He seems like one of those characters, the most likely you could grab a beer with. Like, and it's a silly expression, but like he's just like you could just hang out.
Yeah. If he could drink beer, he would definitely drink beer with
it just goes into the huge empty hole. Now, did you and Chris Burnham develop this together? Like it was you two came at this together and you developed it as a pitch?
Yep. Burnham and I, so we spent a number of years before the pandemic in a studio together. I draw too. He's done some covers for my Image comic book that I wrote. We've worked together on commercial projects that came through the studio with some other artists as well. And then, mostly we would sit around all day and argue about comics and show each other cool stuff. And so we already had a working relationship. When I was co-writing Justice League Incarnate with Josh Williamson, and we had that sequence that was kind of like the history of all the crises that have ever happened, in the DCU. Burnham was the perfect guy to bring in for that, where we kind of explained that. And so as I was wrapping up Future State Gotham, I was talking to my editor, Ben Abernathy, and he's like, you and Burnham should do something together. You guys know each other so well, and you did great on the Justice League Incarnate story. And I was like, yeah, I'm down. Like, I love Burnham's art, and we get along well together. So it felt good making those 10 pages. And then through the course of a conversation where I was kind of ranting about the same stuff of like, everything revolving around the Justice League, and then talking about the Doom Patrol. And I was like, it's the Doom Patrol should be their own franchise. They should be as big as the X-Men. They came out at the same time. They got there first. And finally, Ben said, he's like, well, you and Burnham should just do Doom Patrol. And that's not where I was going. I was just babbling. But I was like, you know what? That is a great idea. And I texted Burnham, and he was like, hell yeah, because it's perfectly made for Burnham to draw. Like, if you're familiar with his art at all.
Yes.
He is made to draw monsters. One of his favorite things to draw is mummies. So there's Larry Trainor's there. Like, it's like all of his little favorite quirks and things he gets to do are all built into this. So he's super excited to be on board. So yeah, him and I got to come in on this from the ground floor and immediately start bouncing ideas off of each other. And like, I was telling him what I was thinking. And, I've been reading Doom Patrol comics all my life, so I probably am a little more versed in the lore. But it was just basically like showing him this, this is what I'm thinking. Even their new symbol, which is like that P nested in the D there, which plays in Doom Patrol had a long history of kind of having a symbol of that like. We designed that back and forth. Like I had an initial idea. I was like, what do you think of this? And it's like, oh, that's a little complicated. What about this? And we kind of passed that back and forth until we kind of narrowed in on that symbol. So it's even with character designs and stuff, like a lot of times I'll say, I'm thinking this because I can draw. Burnham draws way better than me, but it's like I can show him an initial idea and then he can run with it. And if I'm having a hard time explaining something, I can always do a quick sketch, and that really communicates a lot faster. So it's making comics with your buddies. Like that's always good. Yeah.
It's so interesting that you're an artist too. So like it's easier to kind of get these ideas across. And I didn't realize you both designed that logo. I didn't know if that was DC's designer who did the new Unstoppable logo, which rules as well. But there's something that I found in all of their designs and in that new logo is the use of, you can tell me what color this is exactly, but it's like an orangish color.
It's orange.
That's in all of their costumes and the logo and things like that. Was there any significance to using that color versus like their classic red or something like that?
Yeah, it's definitely by design. I want to give the idea of them being superhero EMTs or first responders. The last series they used an ambulance, and it's like, so we're still playing on an idea. I think that was a cool concept. So when they show up on the scene, they almost feel like rescue workers because they're there. It's saving the world by saving the monsters. So it's all baked into that, and a lot of those ideas and the things that they're wearing are even kind of based on, like, if you look at Larry's jacket, that is what a life flight helicopter pilot might wear, is like an EMT jacket. It's just, we've modified it a bit and made it a little sportier. But yeah, all of those ideas are kind of just driving home that it's a subtle way to kind of hit that theme, but it's definitely I wanted them to feel cohesive. I also like that the orange plays on Cliff's color too. So it makes him, because normally if you look at old versions of the team, everybody's wearing red and there's big orange robot man over there by himself.
Yeah.
And I like the way this kind of makes him feel cohesive. And then Cliff's jacket, the white jacket, it's based on like a vintage motorcycle racing jacket. You know, Cliff's a race car driver, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then kind of having him shirtless, you know, it's like a sexy robot race car driver. So I think that's pretty cool.
I'm so excited to get to hear that insight, because like I've been focusing on this color. I was like, there has to be a reason that this is so everywhere. But I love the idea of them as first responders.
Yeah, we're their vehicle, which you'll see in issue 2. We call it the Ambo, but it's a flying vehicle, but it almost looks you'll see it, but it's kind of like it has tones of an ambulance, but it's more of this little futuristic craft that they fly around in. So you know, that's kind of like their main source of transportation there too. Like we put a lot of thought into this. We've got a lot of cool things going on there. Yeah, I don't know if you saw, I posted it the other day, but it was a double page spread that Burnham did for issue 2 of their headquarters, and it's called The Shelter. Yeah, and it's based on a real thing. In the middle of Kansas, there is this abandoned missile silo that somebody kind of converted into luxury post-apocalyptic condominiums. And so I took that same idea and I was like, well, it's kind of neat to have their base in a missile silo, you know, like, because they're weapons, right? Like that's what everybody else thinks of them, and it's like this dangerous thing, and we've converted it into this thing that's not dangerous, a shelter. And when we get into that in issue 2 and start exploring it, we're going to meet a lot of familiar faces that are still a part of the Doom Patrol. For instance, Flex Mentallo is there as kind of like the physical therapist of the team, you know, like, which is just kind of right in line for what his character does. He's the guy that's going to be kind of like right there helping these new metahumans, you know, learn to master their new bodies. And then, you know, Niles Calder is there as a consulting and on a consulting basis. You know, his role has always been this like superhero surgeon. He's always been able to develop medical techniques to help people live with their abilities. So he's there. Usually a lot of his consulting is he should be in charge, but they're not letting him. Like, yeah, you know, the new chief is the new chief.
Probably for the best.
But yeah, it's because of the way we're doing this series, the first 4 issues are kind of done in one, episodic stories. And that really allows us to build out a lot of this concept in a short amount of time. So it's going to be fun.
Listen, the first issue lays like perfect groundwork for like whatever you've got coming. I was so excited. And I'm just looking at this and hearing you talk about it. A lot of books find their laurels on like the found family, but would you consider this book more, they've found their family? Do you think this is more of building a community? Because that's what this building looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is the natural progression, right? Like you start with found family, and then found family evolves into community, and hopefully community evolves into making significant, lasting changes in the world around you. But yeah, that's you're right on track for where we're heading.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. I'm just looking at this picture again because Burnham's art is like it's got a kind of grittiness to it. Which is why he worked so well in Gotham, and seeing the Doom Patrol in Gotham rules. So I'm excited for people to see that.
Yeah. Also, Brian Reber, who's the colorist, it's the first time that they've really worked together. And I think they are a phenomenal team. Like like the attention that Brian gives to Burnham's work is amazing. Like I feel like those guys deserve all the Eisners because they're doing such beautiful work already. And it's just going to get better and better.
I didn't know that because it felt like they've been together forever. I didn't know that. Wow.
Brian has been around for a while, and he's colored a lot of stuff. Like he's got a deep history with Marvel and Valiant, especially. Mm-hmm. He's one of the best colorists in the business. But yeah, him and Burnham are a dream team for me.
Yeah, and Brosseau's. I think it's Brosseau. How do you pronounce?
Pat Brosseau.
his lettering is awesome in this issue. Especially
he's the
the
guy
Negative
that's
Man.
been around for a while. He lettered some of the older Hellboy stuff back in the day.
Mm.
But I've worked with him on a number of books, and I always enjoy working with Pat. He's given it his all on this book too, and that's exciting. Like it's a great team. Ben, our editor, like the best thing about Ben Abernathy is no matter how crazy of an idea I approach him with, he always tries to find a way to say yes. A cool example of that is that since pretty much I've known Burnham, he's had this like obsession with having a scratch off cover. Because somebody showed him at a convention, like doing scratch offs, and he's like, "Oh man, that's cool," and he's really wanted to do it. And when we were getting this approved, he was like, "Oh, maybe we could do a scratch off cover," and I was like, "I don't know, I'll ask." And that happened to coincide with San Diego Comic-Con, and Ben and I got to have breakfast together. And I was like, "Ben, I got a weird request. Burnham wants to do a scratch off cover," and to Ben's credit, he just picked up his phone and started texting people, trying to figure out could he make it work. And then as it's a concept that Burnham and I developed together because we wanted it to just somehow be meaningful. And I think having it be, you're behind Jane, she's looking in the mirror, spray painted on the wall above her is who will Jane be today. And when you scratch off the scratch off part of the variant, the mirror, there's 5 possible outcomes. It's like a character-driven variant cover, which I think is really cool. So it's something, it would get me excited as a reader. So I'm really glad we got to do it. And,
it's so cool. Just the cover itself is beautiful, but then the fact that it's going to be a scratch off, I don't think I've seen it anywhere else, which is
and it's cool for if you're into comics because of the collectability. That's a really neat collectible. But also I just want one because I want to scratch it off. It just seems like it's really fun.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
Now you have the classics, but you're also bringing in some new characters. What aspects of your new characters, Beast Girl and Degenerate, made them good fits for something like the Doom Patrol?
Well, I was looking to fulfill the archetypes of the Doom Patrol, which is like having Jane step into the chief role with this new alter, kind of fulfill that. And really that chief is a new character, even though it's the same physical body. It's a character that's very different from Jane. And then I was like, well, there used to be a Beast Boy, and I was like, it'd be cool if there was a Beast Girl. And that's kind of like started there. And then Burnham, I had an initial drawing, and then he took that and made it just a super cute character. It's like the more he draws Beast Girl, the more alive she's gotten in my mind, and kind of taken on this personality. I love her. I think she's so cool. I think people are gonna love her as a character because she's really interesting. I mean, I want to see like a Beast Girl miniseries, and her off doing her own thing. She's just super cool. And then Degenerate was kind of a character who I wanted almost conflicting in a way, a character like Wolverine is to the X-Men, somebody who's questioning the methodology, questioning why are we doing this, and doing that. And then the way his powers work is the best way to say he's kind of like a Dick Hulk. So it's it's not really motivated by anger. It's motivated by meanness. He has to choose to activate his powers by being mean. And the meaner he gets, the more devolved he gets, and his body kind of starts mutating and getting spiky. And if he's not careful, he can become really mindless and become just this huge giant monster. It just gets bigger and bigger. And so, that starts to raise an interesting question, because when he's in his natural powerless form, he's not conventionally attractive, and he doesn't like that. And so he knows if he can be just a little bit of a dick, he can be this kind of buff dude, and so he knows it might make him a little dumber, but he gets to walk around as a buff guy, right? And so that's interesting to me, somebody who chooses to be a little bit of an asshole all the time, chooses to be a little bit of a dick, how, what kind of conflict and contrast does that add to the rest of the team? So it's going to be neat seeing his character kind of move around with the Doom Patrol as well.
It's very interesting. I really like Beast Girl from issue 1, so I'm excited to see where she goes. Now, issue 1 isn't out yet, isn't it? It isn't out till March.
Nope. Our final order cutoff is Sunday, March 5th, so now's the time to make sure you order it.
It is well worth the order. As someone who's read issue 1, I loved it. But we've also seen the covers for issue 2 and 3. And issue 3, I would kick myself if I didn't get to talk about this. On the front cover is the Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, the best Green Lantern. I would say Larry and Guy are both pretty pig-headed, stubborn people for the most part. They both have very big personalities. Are we going to see them get to interact? Like, are they going to get to go at each other at all?
Are you talking about Cliff and Guy?
Yeah, Cliff. Sorry, I see Larry. Yeah. Larry is not. Larry is very much none of those things I just described. That very different.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I had this idea for this concept with Robot Man before I actually started down the path of Doom Patrol. Like it was just a neat story. I love road trip movies or like hot pursuit movies where somebody's on the run. And, it's like if you had to get the best driver in the DC universe, it's like, I think that's Cliff. He's a race car driver. And I think it's something we've never really seen him do, where he's this big clunking robot, but he's also like a precision performance driver. And that was really cool to me. And then, as we're developing this series, I was like, well, what if there's a metahuman and this metahuman is on the run from the law, because of him becoming a metahuman, that very instant makes him a problem. And it's like, well, that's really neat. And it's like, what's the law if not the Green Lanterns, right? And so now it's like this kid becomes a metahuman, and through no fault of his own, he becomes an intergalactic threat. And now the Green Lanterns are like, well, we gotta take this kid back to the Guardians. We gotta take care of this. And the Doom Patrol like, no, we're gonna sneak him off to our place and keep him in hiding. So it's kind of like Smokey and the Bandit, but with Green Lanterns and the Doom Patrol, which I think is really fun. And it's something we've never really seen before, like other than maybe a couple panels in the Grant Morrison run. We've never really seen Green Lanterns interact with the Doom Patrol in any significant way. So now we've got Cliff and Larry and this kid in a car. Larry's using his powers to kind of scramble the rings from finding them, and they're on the run trying to get across country to get this kid safely to base. While my two favorite Green Lanterns, Kyle and Guy, are out there trying to find them and track them down. So Guy's attitude and Cliff's attitude, they're definitely going to face off. Like, those are two guys that you want to get in a room together and see what they say. On the right circumstances, they're drinking buddies. In the wrong circumstances, they're pitted against each other. So we've got nothing but wrong circumstances for these guys.
I love it. One final thing is, I know you have a ongoing webtoon, Gates of Hell. What is it like writing something like that comes out episodically versus comic format, which is almost episodically but with more room every month?
Yeah, it is a totally different experience. It's not like writing, printed comics. Like printed comics, you think about things like the page turn and things like that. Whereas when you're doing a webtoon, it's just one giant scroll. Mm-hmm. Also, you don't have as much real estate, so you can't have a big splash page. The best you can do is have like a panel that's as big as your phone screen, which is, it's just not the same. You can't do a double page spread. You can't do like the really cool stuff that you can do in comics. So it almost, by nature, it gets a little more almost like TV writing, where there's a lot of more talking and more interacting and things like that. And then you're very much thinking about how the comic ends, and it should end on a cliffhanger, so somebody wants to come back next week. And it coming out weekly. It means that they're shorter. It's roughly 7 or 8 pages worth of panels, probably, when it's all said and done. And then it's just getting that together, making it compelling and exciting, and making people want to come back for it. But it's been fun. It's been interesting learning that, and it sharpens your skills in different ways. Definitely makes you a little more mindful of dialogue and things like that too. But yeah, vastly different. It's almost a whole different skill set entirely.
Well, I'm really excited to see what people think of this book. But where can people find you? I'm going to put all of the FOC things because this will come out before the FOC closes, because I want people to pick this book up because I need as much Doom Patrol as we can get.
I appreciate that so much. I know some people are in parts of the world that are not a part of our direct market system, but if you want to see more of this book, just putting the word out, spreading the word on this podcast, like just letting as many people be exposed to the information as possible so that we can get the people that can order it to order the book. That's how DC knows that they'll want more. I don't know if I mentioned it, but we're starting out as a 6-issue series, but the idea is to kind of do it like a prestige season of television, so that if this series does well, I've already been asked like what the next series, like the next series looks like. And so the plan would be every year to have like 6 issues of Doom Patrol drawn by Burnham come out. And, Burnham, 6 issues a year is a good sweet spot for him so that we get like the best, most detailed work out of him. So yeah, that's we've got a plan like for this book to really have some really cool things, but it starts here. The best advice I can give is just put the whole series on your pull list. That way they know to just to order everything. So hopefully that'll work, and we'll keep coming back and talking about Control and doing that. As far as finding me, I'm Dennis Culver, all one word, everywhere, like Facebook, Twitter, all of those things. I also have a Substack where a lot of times I'll post some like cool information you won't see on my other social medias. And that's, Dennis Culver as well.
I love that. I didn't want to ask what the trajectory of the series was, but now I know. So I have to force people to buy this. But thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, the first 6 issues, the first 4 issues are done in one. And there's like an underarching plot that'll lead to a 2-parter at the end. And then we have plans for the next 6 issues, maybe some specials in between. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, my personal goal is I want Doom Patrol to be its own big, huge franchise in the DC universe, and I want to build it out. It's something I want to, me and Burnham have big plans for it. We love these characters. Like we're really excited to make this like a big part of DC.
I'm so excited to see where this goes. You can find us at Gatecrashers Pod for reviews, analysis, and all things nerdy to find your in. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Daniel. I really appreciate it.
No problem.